Good morning.
I came in real quick, Eddie, because I was afraid if I logged out, it would kick everybody out. So let me make you host because the way this is set up, there is no host. That's why the recording starts automatically. But if you go to if the timing was wrong or something, then you got to have the host approval. So without the host, you can do nothing but teach the class, and recording doesn't start unless I have it set up right, and I didn't have this one right. So let me fix it. Let me make you host, and that should take care of that. Hold on a minute. Okay, you are now the host, and I
Yeah,
can leave without kicking anybody out. So, be all right?
yeah, but I'm fine.
All right, sorry about that. Hey, guys. Hey, how you doing?
So, so it would be it's automatically being recorded, right?
Yeah, we're gonna record all this.
Okay.
Everybody go,
What's up,
ah!
Dave?
All right, man. How y'all? Everybody doing okay?
Good, brother. You?
Yeah, I'm hanging in there. So, doing this, doing that, doing whatever I got to do. So, okay, cool. David, can we see your face, man? Move the camera down. Ah, muchas gracias,
Oh,
hermano.
great. That's better.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, bye.
All right. Thanks, Dave. All right. I take it that the session is being recorded now. Yes. All right. Sorry about that blip, but this is it is being recorded, I'm sure, right? It says recorded. Yeah. All right. We are at chapter, this is the seventh class, and we are at chapters 20 to 22. We're going to begin that this morning. Before I do that, though, I want to encourage us that I think right about now you can be able to start working on your sermon material for the class, because I think um, I think it is, you have sufficient material, I think, to start creating an outline and follow the format that I gave you, the text, the introduction, the purpose of all of that. All right. So we can go ahead and do that. Now, let's look at, this class is going to be concerned with chapters 20 to 22. Let's begin with, as is expected, chapter 20. And what chapter 20 deals with is the duties of the wise and the righteous. What are the responsibilities of the wise person as against and the righteous as against the one who isn't? And what Solomon is doing in this chapter, he is presenting an argument. He's developing his case about what the wise should be doing and how the righteous should be behaving. So he is continuing his theme from the previous chapters. Now, what are the unique things about this chapter, about this section between chapters 20 and 22, is that there are different kinds of proverbs pulled from different structures, different themes, whatever. So there's a collection of proverbs that he is using to illustrate the responsibilities of the wise, of the righteous. So now if we were to go into the chapter, if you look at verses 1 to 4, okay, verses 1 to 4 deals with foolish behaviors. And Solomon is going to be talking about brawling and about laziness. So he's looking in verses 1 to 4 at the foolish behaviors that are out there. Then, when we come to verses 5 to 9, what Solomon now says is, how do you discern the hidden intentions or motives of an individual? So he's now focusing his attention on the hidden motives and intentions of individuals. That is in verses 5 to 9. And what he's saying here is that you do that by looking at their behavior. All right? So you can draw a conclusion. You can surmise, if you wish, what an individual is thinking in his heart, in his mind. If you are able to watch that person's behavior closely, because it will reveal what is in the person's mind. Now we're going to look at the verses, all right? When we come to the third section, that is between verses 10 to 12, Solomon is going to be arguing that we must see things as the Lord sees them. Right? We must look at things as the Lord sees them, because in one sense, in one sense, this is what really matters, right? How do we see things? Do we look at things the way God looks at things? All right, and that's what he makes the point in verses 10 to 12. So all that Solomon is concerned about in chapter 20 is about human behavior and how do we determine and measure human behavior. So when we come to 13 to 17, Solomon now looks at business practices. How do we conduct ourselves in business? That's verses 13 to 17. In verses, am I going too fast?
You're not going too fast, but would you mind repeating the title you did for 1 through 4 and 5 through 9?
Okay, 1 through 4, Solomon is dealing with the foolish behaviors, all right, especially brawling and laziness. And in 5 to 9, he is saying, learn how to discern people's behavior. And you do that, what is in people's mind, rather. Be discerning, be perceptive about what is happening in a person's mind. And the way you do that is to look at how they behave. Their behavior will tell you what's in their mind. All right? That's fine?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, all right, no problem. When we come to verses 18 to 21, he says to us, accept good counsel, and ignore gossip. That is in verses 18 to 21. Accept good counsel and ignore gossip. Then the latter part now, or the ending of the verse of the chapter, from verses 22 to 30, he deals with the value of judgment and discernment. All right, so that is how we're going to attack this this chapter. Now let's go and read verses 1 to 4. All right, and you'd have to do much of the reading for me.
I'll do that one.
Yeah. Let's look now at Proverbs 20, verses 1 to 4.
Wine is a mocker, strong drink a brawler, and whoever is intoxicated by it is not wise. The terror of a king is like the growling of a lion. He who provokes him to anger forfeits his own life. Keeping away from strife is an honor for a man, but any fool will quarrel. The sluggard does not plow after the autumn, so he begs during the harvest and has nothing.
All right. Okay. Any response, comments to these verses? What Solomon is suggesting here in these verses?
Looks like he's suggesting to not drink.
Okay. So he's attacking the idea of drinking. Mm-hmm.
Don't provoke others to anger.
Yeah. Don't cause strife and conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Or anybody else? What is Solomon suggesting? If you want to continue, Chip, that's fine. But if there's anybody else that wants to comment, either Emmanuel or David. All right. Are you finished, Chip?
Well, the sluggard part, the idea is that we need to get up and we need to work. We don't
Yes.
want to waste. Yeah, we don't want to waste our talents.
Yeah, and the idea is that if you don't work, you're going to beg. All right, somebody was going to say something.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yes, Emmanuel.
Alcohol is being personified over here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And also, is it honorable or honorable it is good for starving.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at verse number 10, it is honorable for a man to stop striving. That means wisdom values peace, and also foolish rush into comfort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So he is showing what wisdom can do. And you're right in terms of saying that wine, drunkenness, alcoholism is being personified. It's a mocker. And what he's suggesting here is that it is associated with beatings and brawlings. And that's not wisdom. In fact, what he says is that there is punishment for the person who is intoxicated. Now, here is something. I remember, I don't know how many of you know the English writer Chaucer, Geoffrey Chaucer. He wrote things like the Canberra Tales and all of that. One of the things that Chaucer says in, I think it is the Canterbury Tales, yes, the Canterbury Tales. He says the only difference between madness and drunkenness is that madness is permanent. All right. And here, as you said, he is showing the dangers or the foolish of drunkard, of being intoxicated. All right. So he says there are certain, I'm going to put it in a sort of strong term, because this is what Solomon is saying. There are certain types of idiots. There are certain types of persons who are just dunce. All right. I don't know if you know the term that somebody's being idiotic. One, it is the person who drinks, because the very pleasure that he gets from alcohol is mocking him. Why? It is going to cause him to become a brawler, and it is going to lead him to astray. And Solomon says that is not wise. All right. The second thing, why is it the case? Because the drunkard lacks self-consciousness, and he lacks self-control, and therefore he becomes a brawler. It says wine is a mocker, among strong drink a brawl. All right. And then he says in verse 2 to 4, the terror of a king is like a growling of a lion. In other words, you don't want to ruffle the feathers, or you don't want to cause the king to be angry with you. Why? Or the justice system as representing the king, the laws of the land. You don't want to run afoul of the law, because it will bring you harm. Right? He's like a growling lion. Now here's what, and then he comes back to the person who is always quarrelsome. Wisdom doesn't go for quarrels. And also in verse 4, he says that it comes back to this idea of laziness. The lazy person is also being idiotic, because he is not prepared for the harvest. Why? He has sown nothing. All right. So what we're seeing, what that Solomon is doing here, is looking at the behavior of the foolish person. It is seen in his intoxication. It is seen in his running afoul of the law. It is seen in him being lazy. It is seen in him making quarrels. That's not wisdom. All right. So that's what he says in verses 1 to 4. Any question, comments anybody want to make before we move on? Yes, David.
Brother?
Yes, go ahead.
I was looking the word brawler because I didn't know the
Mhm.
meaning, and I found something interesting, because it's like a loud noise or a fight, but very nosy.
Yeah.
So I was comparing that when it talks about the roaring of the lion, that is loud as well.
Okay,
And
yes.
and any quarrel. So I found a interesting connection about the being loud and fight and all that compared with the foolish behavior.
Yes, right. Okay. In the same way, you're going to be afraid of the growling of a lion, because it suggests, it shows danger. It shows that you're in trouble. And the brawler, who is just loud and all of that, he also is in danger, because he's going to cause contention and strife. Yes, good point, David. Good point. All right. Now let us look at verses 5 to 9. All right. Could somebody read verses 5 to 9 for me?
Counsel in the heart of a man is like a deep water, but a man of understanding will draw it out. Most men will proclaim each his own goodness, but he who finds a faithful man, the righteous man walks in his integrity. His children are blessed after him. A king who sits on the throne of judgment scatters all evil with his eyes. He who say, I have made my heart clean, I am pure from my sins.
All right. Okay. Here is now Solomon. Solomon talks about that. What does your translation say? The purpose in a man's heart. Does it say the plan, or what does it say? Does it use the word purpose any or plan? The ESV says purpose.
King James says counsel.
All right, counsel. Okay. And ESV. What translation are you using, Emmanuel?
NKJV.
Oh, you're using New King James. And what word does it use?
Counsel.
Counsel. Okay. And Chip, what are you using? You're using
the NASB.
the NIV?
NASB.
Okay.
New American
Okay.
Standard.
What it says? What it says?
Which verse are you on?
Verse 1. The word the purpose of a man's heart. What
Verse
word does
5.
it use?
Verse 5.
It says what?
The plan.
Okay. Right. Yeah, that's okay. NASB says plan. New King James and King James says counsel, and the ESV says the purpose. All right. Now
You want me to
here
put a
is
parallel Bible up?
okay.
I can share a parallel Bible with class right now if you want me to.
Okay, no problem. Go ahead. No problem. Because I want to make a point of verse 5. All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chip. We are at verse 5. So all right. The plan, the purpose, the counsel, the thought, though good advice is deep in the heart, the purpose of a person's heart, counsel in the heart of a man. All right, great, thanks. You can take it out. Right. Here is what Solomon is saying. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. So here's what Solomon is saying. In fact, the purpose in a man's heart is like deep water, but a man of understanding will draw it out. What is Solomon suggesting here?
If you have understanding, the plan will become clearer.
All right, okay. All right, anybody else?
I was thinking like those moments when you are trying to explain something, but you need to take care and wait a little bit to try to take that thought in words. I was thinking about that.
All right, okay. So you're trying to get your thoughts together then. All right, okay. Here's what Solomon is saying. That word plan, counsel, whatever we have, Solomon is saying the goal of a man's objective, what a man intends to do is deep. In other words, it is buried in the person's mind. Notice he uses the word, it is buried in the person's heart. Now, when we think of the heart, we're thinking here of the person's emotions, the person's will, or another term we can use is the person's volition. What a person intends to do is buried deep inside him, right? It is only a person who is able, who is perceptive enough to see through the person's mind, or to see through the person's goal and objective based on his behavior, that is going to pull out what a person is thinking. In other words, Solomon is saying the wise person is able to discern, is able to assess what the person is really thinking. Hence, the person who has wisdom, who is perceptive, discerning, will see through a person. You can actually make an assessment of the person even though that person's goal and idea is deep in his emotions and will. All right, so now look at now the contrast here. Look at verse number 6. All right, now many a man proclaims his own steadfast love, but a faithful man who can find. All right, now here is Solomon. That word steadfast, or that phrase steadfast love, all right, again, does your translation say steadfast love? How does your translation refer to steadfast love? Does it say steadfast love?
The new NET translated their loyalty.
All right. That's, anybody else uses the word loyalty?
My own is
Any other
goodness.
translation uses loyalty? Yours does, Emmanuel?
Is goodness.
Is goodness. Okay. All right. Do this for me now. Many a man proclaims his goodness. Many a man proclaims his loyalty. Many a man proclaims his commitment. But, here is the parallel, the antithetical parallel, but a faithful man who can find. You see? All right. Because the word here is the word hesed. I think I've given you this word before, Hessed. Here is Solomon's point. Whereas several friends profess loyalty, profess their commitment, it is difficult to find a trustworthy person. They can say that they are loyal, they can say that they are committed. And if you look at verse 5, the plan that they have in their heart, but it is difficult to find a loyal friend. Solomon, how do I then know the difference between a faithful friend and a person who has his plan deep in his heart? Well, you do it by assessing the person's behavior. In other words, all right, we can all claim to be, but what determines who we are is our action. And that is what Solomon is saying in verses 5 and 6. It is the behavior that is, in other words, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. I hope I'm getting that right. All right, now, so here's what he says. The righteous who walks in his integrity, blessed are his children after him. In other words, this idea of walking, this idea of conducting your life, this idea of going and the way you conduct your life, all right, it will be a blessing. Now, so if we go back to Proverbs 17:17, a friend, remember this, a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born of adversity. In 1824, Solomon says, a man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. Solomon is saying in these verses, in verses 5, right down to verse 9, a person, we can judge people, we can, in other words, we know people through their behavior. So what Solomon is saying, ensure that you are a person who walks in integrity. Like the king, make sure that you are a person who will give justice. Watch what he's doing. A king who sits on the throne winners. He's able to remove evil from good. He is able to recognize the evil then. So here is Solomon. Who can say, I have made my heart pure? I am clean from my sin. What is Solomon implying? Who can say, I have cleansed my heart, I am pure from my sin?
The one who listens to Lady Wisdom?
The one who listens to Lady Wisdom. But here's the point now. Solomon is saying, be careful how you assess people, because all of us have shortfalls. None of us can say we're pure from sin. So you have to be wise enough to discern who you can trust. In fact, that word pure, and that word pure is the word blameless. We all have faults. So you have to make sure that in your, watch this, the claim that you make about the person you are, make sure that in your thoughts, in your feelings, or in your emotions, in your, you can be trusted. Because that's the only way that people will believe what you say. So Solomon is, okay, we all can make the claim. We can all say we're this and we're that, but does our speech betray us? Does our action support what we say? You see what I'm saying? Solomon is saying, make sure that you live a life that is blameless. Make sure that you live a life that's pure. Yes, David.
And this verse 9, can we say, like, because of the context that the writer is saying, who can say I have in my heart clean, I am pure from sins? If anyone can say that, they need to compare that with their behavior.
Yes.
Is that
yes.
right for the context?
Yes.
Okay.
In other words, okay, you can say whatever you want to say, but if your action doesn't align with what you say, then what you say means nothing. In other words, your action has to be, your words have to be supported by your action. They have to align with your action. Yes, that is what Solomon is saying. And therefore, you must be able to assess people through not only what they say, but what they do and how they act in different situations. That's Solomon. And then by extension, he's saying, make sure that we ourselves are able to live lives that align with what we say we are. And that's Solomon's point. All right, now look at verses 12 to 19. All right. Okay, before I go that, even a child, look at verse 11. Even a child makes himself known by his acts, by whether his conduct is pure and upright. See what I'm saying? Even an innocent child will be able to do that. All right. Now, look at verses 12 through to 19. All right. Solomon now is going to go into business relations. Watch him. The hearing ear and the seeing eye, the Lord has made them both. Love not sleep, lest you come to poverty. Open your eyes and you will have plenty of bread. Bad, says the buyer. But when he goes away, then he boasts. There is gold in abundance of costly stones, but the lips of knowledge are a precious jewel. Take a man's garment when he has put up security for a stranger, and hold it in pledge when he puts up security for foreigners. Bread gained by deceit is sweet to a man, but afterwards his mouth will be full of gravel. Plans are established by counsel, because wise guidance wage war. Whoever goes about slandering reveals secrets. Therefore, do not associate with a simple babbler. All right, lot of things here. Anything strikes you about these verses between verses 12 and 19? What are some of the things that Solomon, you think, is highlighting here?
I think really stuck out to me. There is gold and abundance of jewels, but the lips of knowledge are more precious things.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And that last one that we just read, he who goes about as a slander reveals secrets, therefore do not associate with a gossip.
Okay. All right.
Your circle matters. Who you keep around you means something.
Okay. Evil communications, good morals, kind of a thing. Anything that strikes you about what Solomon is saying? Emmanuel, look as if you want to say something.
He said, too much of sleeping leads to poverty.
Mm-hmm. All right. So you're not supposed to don't love sleep. Don't sleep too much. Love not sleep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right.
You're
Anything
talking a
else?
lot about honesty, being honest in any dealings that you have with anyone, keeping dishonesty away from you and making sure that you're given good measure.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be deceitful. In other words, don't mislead people.
All right. Okay. What Solomon is highlighting here, as some of you are saying, is two things. Be honest in business. Be honest in business. All right. So here is not only must you be honest in business. In verse 12 to 13, Solomon is saying you need to be thinking, you need to be wise in your dealings with individuals. Solomon does a couple of things here. He says, number one, in your speech and in your business practices, do not lie. Don't defraud people. All right. In other words, in verse 14, in verse 16, he's saying, don't promise. He's coming back to the same thing. Don't promise and make a commitment in business that you can't keep. All right. Solomon is also suggesting, you see, when you defraud people, look at what he says in verse 17. Bread gained by deceit is sweet to a man. But what happens? Afterwards, his mouth will be full of gravel. You can get by through deceitful means. You can defraud people. But at the end of it all, it is not going to abound to your good. Your mouth is going to be full of gravel. What Solomon also says here, you see a person who is a gossip, you see a person who is a babbler, run away from them. Don't keep company with them. Plans are established by counsel, by wise guidance, wage war. In other words, not physical war, but in other words, you are going to oppose that which is fraudulent, whether in business or in speech. Okay, here's what he says. When he says there is gold and abundance of costly stones, but the lips of knowledge are a precious jewel. When you live a life that is when your life is guided by the fear of the Lord, by wisdom, that is much better than material things. So one, don't defraud people in business. Don't defraud people in speech. All right? A person who goes around gossiping, and you don't need that person in your life because he's going to bring you misery. All right? Bad, verse 14. Love not sleep, lest you come to poverty. Again, Solomon is talking about our actions and our behavior as well. All right? This is crucial. Okay? Now, here is Solomon now. In verse 16, he talks about you must hold people accountable. All right. So he's going back and discussing the same kinds of things that he has been discussing in the previous chapters. All right. So that is, like, look at verse 16. Take a man's garment when he has put up security for a stranger, and hold it in pledge when he puts up security for foreigners. In other words, this is business. Okay, you put up what the collateral or whatever, and all that Solomon is saying: be genuine in your speech and in your actions with others in business. That's basically Solomon's point. All right. Still in chapter 20. Look now, read for me, somebody, verses 18 to 21.
Plans are established by counsel. By wise counsel wage war. He who goes about as a talebearer reveals secrets. Therefore, do not associate with one who flatters with his lips. Whoever curses his father or his mother, his lamp will be put out in deep darkness.
All right. Okay. What is Solomon's advice to us?
Accept good counsel.
Say that again.
Accept good counsel.
All right. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid of taking
Advice.
wise advice. Even if the wise advice is what you don't like, there is benefit in taking wise counsel. In other words, if you want to live a life of a good life, Solomon is saying, don't be afraid to take advice from people who are wise. All right. Here is again, Solomon is saying, seek advice when you're making any plans. When you're going to plan out whatever you're doing, make sure you get sound advice. All right? Make sure you get sound advice. That's one. Two, do not whoever goes about slandering reveals secrets. Therefore, do not associate with a simple babbler. People who gossip and make mischief with their lips, you don't want to associate with them. All right? Now, here is another thing that Solomon says. You see the counsel of your parents? Never take that for granted. Never disrespect. Okay? If one curses his father or his mother, his lamp will be put out in utter darkness. An inheritance gained hastily in the beginning will not be blessed in the end. All right. Let's stay on this for a while. Solomon's point here is, don't curse your father. Don't curse your parents. Accept their counsel. When he says for instance, if one curses his father, his lamp will be put out. What does Solomon mean? His lamp will be put out.
Cursing parents bring distractions.
Say it again.
Cursing parents bring distractions. As it's made mention in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1 and 2. Say, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise.
Mm-hmm. Okay. No.
Brother?
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yes, David. David, and I'll comment afterwards.
No, I was thinking normally the lamp is associated with the life, and I was thinking the commandment with promise: honor thy father and thy mother, and ye shall enjoy or uh, a long life. So I was thinking about that.
Yeah. Okay. Both you and Emmanuel are right on it. Here's what Solomon is saying. In the law that God gave Israel, the commandment that you will live long on the earth is in the covenant. When you disregard the advice of parents, not only are you causing destruction, but the promise that is in the commandment about honoring father and mother and you'll live long on the earth. Paul repeats it in Ephesians chapter 6, where it talks about that you may live long. In other words, life, the promise is your life can be enhanced. Right? You know that one of the means by one of the capital punishment, you were stoned to death if you disrespected your parents. All right. So here's what Solomon is saying. Disrespect will bring sudden destruction and misery on you of your parents. And now here's what Solomon now says. Cursing your parents will extinguish your lamp. You're going to die. You're not going to, your life won't be enhanced. But watch what Solomon says. An inheritance gained hastily in the beginning will not be blessed in the end. What does he mean by that? You think?
Like the prodigal son.
Mm-hmm.
An
All right.
encouragement
What
to be
about the prodigal
patient, I
son?
guess.
Hmm?
An encouragement to be patient. Good things come to those who wait.
All right. Okay. That's one. There is something else too.
When I was studying about that parable, I was reading some customs of the Jews, and to ask the inheritance before the passing of the father was a shame, and was very awful to treat like that your father. So even the punishment, if the the children repent, it was a public, not a stunning, but a public punishment in the in the place, or in a public place. And I was thinking about that too. It's like treating bad your parents, asking for that before.
All right. Okay. So that's why Chip brought up the prodigal son. Do you know the statement that says easy come, easy go? What here's Solomon's point. Don't curse your parents because they have an inheritance for you that you can lose. But you see, when you get things without sacrifice and effort, you will not appreciate it. It will easily be taken away from you. Why? Because the sacrifice, an inheritance hastily gained will not be blessed in the end. In other words, when you don't, okay, put it this way. If you have to work for what you get and what you have, you appreciate it more than if it is just given to you freely like that, because it would not cost you anything. All right. You see what Solomon is saying. When you put an effort into certain things, it is more, you appreciate it more. All right. You appreciate more what you work for. And that is Solomon's point. You appreciate it more if you have to put effort out to get it. All right. So that's him in verse 21. All right. Give me one. I'm still online, but I'm going to take my video off for a while. Give me 1 minute. All right, I'm back. All right. Sorry about that. All right. Let's now go to the we just read verses 18 to 21. All right. Let's now look at 24 to 25. And could somebody just read that for me? All right. We just read 21. Do not say, I will repay evil. Wait for the Lord, and he will deliver you. On equal weights, again, he's talking about the idea of being honest in business. So let's look at verses 23 to the end of the chapter. Could somebody read that for me?
Diverse weights are abominable to the Lord, and dishonest scales are not good. A man's steps are of the Lord. How then can a man understand his own way? It is a snare for a man to devote rashly something as holy, and afterward to reconsider his vows.
Right on to verse to verse 30.
A wise king sifts out the wicked and brings the treasuring wheel over them. The spirit of a man is the lamp of the Lord, searching all the inner depths of his heart. Mercy and truth preserve the king, and by loving kindness he upholds the throne. The glory of young men is their strength, and the splendor of old men is their gray head. Blows the heart, cleans away his evil, as do stripes the inner depths of the heart.
All right. Anything that you want to comment on in these verses, from verses 23 down?
Leave revenge to God.
Say it again.
Leave revenge to God.
Okay, all right. Yeah. So what Solomon is doing here now, Solomon is now looking at what God is doing. All right. So he is making the emphasis on what God is doing. All right. Anything else?
24 is really good, I think. Man's
Which one?
steps, number 24, man's steps are ordained by the Lord. How then can man understand his way?
All right. Okay. There's a counterpart to this verse. The verse just came to me. It's
The way
about
of a man. Is that what the one you're talking about?
which one?
The way of a man. Well, I'm trying to remember the scripture. A way in the
Okay,
way.
okay. There's a way, right? There's a way that seemeth right. That's the one you're thinking of?
Yes.
Yes, thanks for reminding me. That's what I'm thinking of. Why is it slipping me again? There's a way that seems right to a man, but the end of it is the way of death. All right? And what Solomon is saying is that we can have our own ways. We can have our own ideas of how to live. But when our lives are ordered by God, that abounds to our benefit. All right? So in other words, God is the one who is going to order our steps. And how does he do that? By our being obedient to his law. All right?
Proverbs 14:12.
It is Proverbs 14:12. Yes, thanks. Right. Thank you. Now here is something. The king in verses 26 to 29, Solomon puts his attention on the king. All right. And he's suggesting is that it is through wisdom that the king is going to be guided and do what is right and just. Kings rule well by God's wisdom. There's a verse that I want us to look at. Look at verse 29. Look at verses 29. The glory of young men is their strength, but the splendor of old men is their gray hair. Any comments? The glory of young men is their strength, but the splendor of old men is their gray hair. I want us to comment on that. Who wants to try? There's a contrast here because Solomon is suggesting that the glory of the strength, the glory of young men is their strength. But the parallel, antithetical parallel, is the splendor of the old men is their gray hair. So you have young men in contrast to old men. You have glory as against splendor. You have strength as against gray hair. Anything that strikes you about what Solomon is doing here?
Wisdom, or the use of wisdom over time, brings understanding. That's kind of what I would take from it.
All right. Wisdom over time brings understanding. The glory of the young men is their strength, but the splendor of the old men is their gray hair. Yes,
I
man.
will also say the strength of a youth is equal to the wisdom of age.
Mm-hmm.
And also, we should remember now our Creator, as so far as we are youth. That is when we need to seek for wisdom. And when we are of old or of age, people will come to us and we will advise them. As Solomon advises his son.
Mm-hmm.
If you read Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse number 1, was it, remember now your Creator in the days of your youth, before the difficult days come, and the years draw near when you stay, I have no pleasure in them.
Mm-hmm. All right, okay. Yeah, okay, that's a comment. All right. David, what do you think? I'm going to comment on what we're saying. David, what do you think?
I was thinking, if we keep it in the context, it's saying that the gray hair or gray head is synonym
Mm-hmm.
of the of discernment and judgment instead of the strength and as well.
Go on. Sorry.
Yeah, no, as well, the in verse 25 I noticed that is again talking about the hastily behavior, making a vow without knowing, and I was thinking about hefte.
Yes, Jephthah. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's interesting.
Here is the idea. There are certain positives that a young person has. He's strong and vigorous, and physically that's where his strength is. All right. That's his glory. He takes pride in his physical strength. But you see the gray-haired person, the person who over the years has remembered his creator in the days of his youth. The person who through experience has become wise, that person is an asset because he is able to give sound, godly advice. The young person, because he, not all the while, but in some cases, trust in his physical strength, sometimes he does not make right decisions. He needs the wisdom of the aged, of the gray hair, to guide his steps right. You see what I'm saying? Because remember, the gray haired person at one point in his life, his glory was his strength. But what is he doing now? He is able to be more sober. he's able to be more collected, he's able to be more prudent because of the years of experience and wisdom that he has. Yes, physical strength is good, but Solomon seems to be highlighting the point that look here, wisdom is greater than physical strength. Age and experience is more valuable than physical strength. You see what I'm saying? So when he says, the glory of young men is their strength, but the splendor of old men is their gray hair. Solomon is saying, yes, strength is okay, strength is good and fine, but there is a greater value in experience, wisdom, and age. Experience and wisdom that is reflected in years of experience, hence the gray hairs. All right? The only problem with me is that I have gray hairs, but not on my head. All right? But the whole point is that Solomon again is emphasizing the value of experience and the value of wisdom earned over the years. All right? And then here's how it comes out. Blows that wound cleanse away evil. Stroke make clean the innermost parts. What is Solomon's point here? Discipline helps to build moral character. That's what he's suggesting here. That discipline helps to build moral character. All right. Let's go into any responses to chapter 20 overall. If you are going to summarize chapter 20, what would you say chapter 20 is about in your own words? What do you think are some of the main issues in chapter 20? Okay, yes, Chip.
Act wisely and lean on those who came before you. Be careful of people you surround yourself with and the behaviors that you take up. And ask for wisdom and discernment.
All right, okay. Just in other words, Solomon is saying, be careful of your actions, your behaviors, and the company that you keep, who you're gaining your advice from, your counsel from. All right. Anybody else? How would you summarize Proverbs 20? If you were going to make think, what are the high points of it? David, look, I hear you say something.
I was thinking a verse in James. I don't remember where it was, but it says something like
Emmanuel.
Yeah, Emmanuel most will know. It is like, if anyone with understanding among you, let him show him by his good conduct, something like that. I don't remember the exact words, but I was thinking about that, and that verse strike me. I don't remember where it was. We're talking we're talking about the who can claim. Oh, verse 9. Who can say, I have made my heart clean, I am pure from my sin? So, human behavior, and that is the goal, that nobody can blame me and act like God want me to do.
Yeah. I think it might be James 2, where it talks about showing the value of good works. It might be in James chapter 2. All right, Emmanuel, what do you think about chapter 20?
So, chapter 20 is talking about how wisdom avoids sin and sloth, and also talk about how our character leads to integrity. And also it's also talk about self-control and peace and honesty, how humans should embrace wisdom so that we should be obedient towards our parents and at the same time our maker. And also talk about we should hate this honesty. And also we shouldn't walk in our own ways. Always we should allow God to direct our steps. That is the ultimate goal in life.
Yeah. All right, great. So basically, Solomon is dealing with social conduct and behavior and how it builds our character and the ways that we go about building character in terms of the associations that we make, the decisions that we make, and the counsel that we take from people who are wise. All right? Yes. All right.
There's one thing I wanted to add, brother.
Yes, Chip.
One thing that kind of did stick out that after I said what I said, I thought about was this area is talking about action required.
Mm-hmm. Okay. In other words, I think what you're saying is the idea that people are going to know us not so much by what we say, but they're able to know us through the actions that we perform. Yes. Okay, right. So Solomon is talking about how important physical action or physical actions are. All right. Okay. Until we get the break, we should take the break at 10:30, right?
Can we take it right now? I need to use the bathroom.
Okay, all right. Let's take our break now. This is now 10:24, and let's get back at 11:45.
Thank you.
All right, we come back at 11:45. All right, let's take our break. Okay. Let's begin with chapter 21. Now, in chapter 21, we have, in terms of looking at the verses again, we have in verses 1 to 3 of chapter 21 a discussion of God's sovereignty over rulers and religions. That's verses 1 to 3, God's sovereignty over rulers and religions. So the sovereignty of God is being emphasized here. In verses 4 to 8, we have the issue of pride and planning. So verses 1 to 3, God's sovereignty over rulers and religion. Verses 4 to 8, pride and planning. Verses 9 to 13, we have domestic and social ethics. Here in verses 14 to 19, there is the consequences of our lifestyle. Verses 20 to 23, there is wealth and generosity. Verses 24 to 26, Solomon goes back to the issue of pride and laziness. And from verses 27 to 31, he contrasts false witness with human plans, false witness and human plans with God's ultimate rule. That is verses 27 to 31. All right, let's go now and look at verses 1 to 3. The king's heart is a stream of water in the hand of the Lord, in the hand of the Lord. He turns it wherever he will. Every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the heart. To do righteousness and justice is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. All right. Here, what we have is the contrast. We have the contrast here suggested by the but. All right. Now, when it says the king's heart is a stream of water in the hand of the Lord, he turns it wherever he wills. What Solomon is saying here is that God is the ultimate power. Good. That God is the ultimate power. So what we have is the king within God rules overall, basically. That's Solomon's point here. And what he is suggesting is that God is the person who weighs the heart. God knows what the heart truly is, as against man who wants to justify himself. So, for instance, every way of a man is right in his own eyes. Now, here's the contrast. But the Lord weighs the heart. You can say whatever you wish to say. You can, in other words, for you, you can think that you are right. But of course, God knows what you truly are. Okay? God knows you. You can justify yourself if you want, but God weighs the heart, puts it in a balance. And again, it's the image of the commerce where you put that in a scale to determine what is the true measure and true value of the thing. There's something here, though, that I want to point out. And it is in verse 3. To do righteousness and justice is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. What is contrasting two good things and saying which is more valuable? Now, my question is, what two things are being contrasted in verse 3?
Righteousness versus sacrifice.
All right. Okay. Righteousness versus sacrifice. All right. What two things? Sorry. David, Emmanuel, what do you think? What two things are being contrasted here? In verse 3.
Righteousness and justice.
That is being righteousness and justice, that's one thing. Righteousness and justice is viewed as one element.
Against sacrifice.
Okay, all right. Now, what is sacrifice? What does Solomon mean by righteousness and justice is more acceptable to God than sacrifice? What's sacrifice?
I was thinking the same phrase or similar was told from Samuel to Saul when he performed something thinking that it was the good thing, and he said obedience is better than sacrifices. So
Okay.
when I see sacrifice, I think the very act of to slaughter a bull or a goat, and so justice and judgment can mean something deeper or wider, including all that obedience and everything.
All right. But what is sacrifice? That's worship, you know.
I feel like there's a dividing a dividing line here between whose eyes is seeing it, right? Because the righteousness and justice would be in the eyes of the Lord, and our own sacrifice would be in our eyes.
Okay. All right. Now here, what I want us to see here, I'm taking all the points, right? What I'm seeing is that two good things are being contrasted: righteousness and in fact, doing righteousness and being just is, Solomon says, it is preferred. God prefers that than worship to him. Is it that God does not appreciate worship? Certainly not. But there are two things here. In Micah, what does the Lord require of thee? But to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Okay, here is something. David brought up 1 Samuel 15:22. To obey is better than sacrifice, and to listen, to hearken, than the fat of rams. When okay, here's another situation that I want you to consider. Jesus says, if you are on your way to worship and you remember that your brother has an ought against you, leave your gift at the altar and go reconcile with your brother, then come to worship. So here, the point I'm trying to make here is and I'm asking, is Solomon suggesting that there are some things that are more valuable to God than worship? You would think that God would prize and treasure worship. Are there some things that can affect our worship to God? What is it? I hate to put it this way, but just for the sake of the argument, if you were to put two things before God, obedience and sacrifice, righteousness and sacrifice, reconciliation to your brother and worship, sacrifice, which would God take? What do you think?
Obedience.
You what?
The obedience.
The obedience. All right. No. Doesn't that suggest that as important as worship is, that there are certain things that can negatively affect our worship to God? That worship becomes more meaningful to God if certain things are in place?
For sure, when Jesus mentioned in John 4:24, uh, he is a spirit, and they that worship him must be worship him in spirit and in truth. It requires or involves two things. So mentality and honesty, but as well according to the word. So the sacrifice can be according to the word, to the law of Moses. But if you do it just because it's a checking list, so that doesn't mean nothing.
You see, okay, here are some things again. What does Paul say? If I give my body to be burnt and have not love, it profits me nothing. And what Paul is suggesting in 1 Corinthians 13 is the issue of motive. Here is Solomon's point. He's not saying that worship to God is not important. and is not valuable. But he's saying that there are certain things, if they are not in place, our worship becomes meaningless. And what he's saying here is doing righteousness, doing justice is preferred. That's what he's saying here, is more acceptable to God, is more valuable to God than our mere act of worship. So our act of worship can become futile and vain if there are certain things that do not accompany it. And what is dramatic is where Jesus says, if you had a choice between reconciliation with your brother and giving your gift on the altar, you know what you do? Go reconcile with your brother and then come to worship. But doesn't that suggest that the way we see worship is completely different? Now, Chip talk about the way we see it as against God see. Doesn't it suggest that the way we see worship to God is completely different from the way God sees worship to him? And
So
this is Solomon's point here. There are certain things, if they're not in place, our worship becomes futile. That is, being right, doing right, and behaving justly and fairly. Yes, Chip.
so action leads to better worship.
The way we conduct our lives, the way we conduct our lives is going to does affect our worship.
Well, it
You
seems
see what I'm
like
saying?
our actions in
Yeah, go on.
this text, our righteousness and our justice would be encouraging and uplifting to others trying to worship, therefore edifying our brethren by our actions.
Living right with our brothers, behaving justly with our brothers is one of the criteria that will make our worship more meaningful to God. All right. Now, so look now what he says in verses 4 to 8. Haughty eyes and a proud heart, the lamp of the wicked are sin. The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes under to poverty. The getting of treasure by a lying tongue is a fleeting vapor and a snare of death. The violence of the wicked will sweep them away because they refuse to do what is just. The way of the guilty is crooked, but the conduct of the pure is upright. Here is Solomon's point again. Pride, dishonesty, lying are means which bring about our spiritual demise. You see, in other words, we are going to gain what we sow with pride, devious dealings, the way we lying, we lie to get gain. We lie to protect ourselves, to gain things. Solomon is saying those things come back again. That is illustrating or illustrative of his phrase, every way of man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the heart. You see, we might think that we can get by with pride, with fraudulent behavior, with lying, and with just being violent and thing, and it might suit us for a while. But Solomon says those will come to no end. Why? Because notice, the plans of the diligent, but everyone who is hasty comes to poverty. The getting of treasures is a fleeting vapor. The violence of the wicked will sweep him away. It is the way of the guilty is crooked, but the conduct of the purity is upright. So again, Solomon is looking at the aspect of pride, the way we plan ahead, what we are trying to achieve, and the means by which we achieve it. If we continue that route, there will be no reward. It will be seeming reward and short-lived. All right. Now, look at 9, verses 9 to 13, and somebody could read 9 to 13 for me.
Better to dwell in the corner of a house top than a house shared with contentious woman. The soul of a wicked desire evil. His neighbor finds no favor in his eye. When the scoffer is punished, the simple is made wise. But when the wise is instructed, he receives knowledge. The righteous God wisely consider the house of the wicked, overthrowing the wicked for their wickedness. Whoever shouts his ear to the cry of the poor will also cry himself and not be heard.
All right, that is up to that's 13, right? Yes. All right. Solomon is looking again. He's going into the home. And he's suggesting that where there is conflict in the home, nothing works well. It is, and again, here is the better than proverb. It's better to live in the roof than. And so what Solomon is doing here is suggesting that our home life is critical. All right. Solomon talks about in verses 10 to 11, the soul of the wicked desires evil when a scoffer is punished. All right. So for Solomon here, there are some things that will bring about the growth of the wise: punishment, discipline. So he says, the wise man who is instructed, who listens to advice, he gains knowledge. All right. So he's not afraid of desiring knowledge. He's not afraid of seeking after knowledge. his desire to go after knowledge will help to strengthen his life because he becomes wiser. All right. Now, here is what he's suggesting. Solomon now is contrasting in verses let's look at verses 12 and 13. Do not, in other words, Solomon is saying here, don't forget the poor. The righteous one, I notice the righteous one is capitalized, meaning referring to Jehovah. He observes the house of the wicked. He throws the wicked down to ruin. Whoever does not close his ear to the cry of the poor will himself call out and not be answered. In other words, treat people who are less fortunate than you with some amount of respect as well. Okay, that's Solomon's argument. How we treat each other is important. All right, and any questions or comments about that? Any comments that anybody wants to make? All right, okay, let's go to 14 to 19. One of you read that for me, please. (14 to 19). Who's going to read that? All right.
Chip.
Chip. All right. Go ahead, Chip.
Okay, you want 14 through who?
Through 19.
19, okay. A gift in secret subdues anger, and a bride in the bosom strong wrath. The exercise of justice is the joy for the righteous, but is terror to the workers of iniquity. A man who wanders from the way of understanding will rest in the assembly of the dead. He who loves pleasure will become a poor man. He who loves wine and oil will not become rich. The wicked is a ransom for the righteous, and the treacherous is in the place of the upright. It is better to live in a desert land than with contentious and vexing women.
All right. Okay. Why are you laughing, Chip?
I'd have to agree with his wisdom.
I don't know. Solomon seems to know about women, right? He's always talking about women and what you not to do and whatever. All right. Now, here, essentially, Solomon's point is our lifestyle has consequences. How we live have consequences. For instance, look at what he says in 14 to 16. Just a gift in secret averts anger. What is a gift in secret?
Bribery.
What's a gift in secret, do you think?
Bribery.
And a concealed bribe. Say again? She's saying these deceitful ways in which we acquire things will last for a little while. Okay? They will help, you have benefits, but notice what he says. When justice is done, it is joy to the righteous. All right? One who, in other words, you give a bribe, you give concealed things, yes, but really, you don't want to be involved in that, because that is not joy. One who wanders from the way of good sense will rest in the assembly of the dead. All right, you're going to die. I mean, it might suit you for a while. And notice what he says now. And I like this. Whoever loves pleasure will be a poor man. Why do you think Solomon is saying that? If you love pleasure, you will become a poor man.
You focused on the wrong things.
Yeah, your focus is okay.
And it's expensive.
For one thing, it's going to be expensive. You remember the prodigal son? Right? And okay, now here is, let's take a leaf out of Moses's book. All right? Moses says, I chose to suffer with the people of God than to go after pleasure. Why? Because I realized that pleasure was temporary. Hebrews 11. So what Solomon is saying is our lifestyle does have consequences. So if we do the wrong thing, if we love pleasure, if we take bribes, and here is the point. And Chip finds this very funny. Right? Chip finds verse 17, not verse 17. Chip finds, let me tell you the verse that Chip finds funny.
19.
Where is it? 19. 19. But here's the point though. You know what Solomon is saying? The decisions that we make, our decisions that we make, whether it is in business, whether it is our social life, whether it is in our intimate life or marital life, be careful how you choose and what you go after, because it will have consequences. And that is what Solomon is saying. You need to be prudent. Again, you need to be wise in the decisions that you make, your desire, what you go after, what's your focus, because it will have consequences. And so he's illustrating it from different points of view. All right. Now, watch what he says in verse 20 to 23. Watch this. Precious treasure and oil are in a wise man's dwelling, but the foolish man devours it. Whoever pursues righteousness and kindness will find life, righteousness, and honor. A wise man scales the city of the mighty and brings down the stronghold in which they trust. Whoever keeps his mouth and his tongue keeps himself out of trouble. What is Solomon saying again in these verses? What we seek after, what we desire, whether it is wealth or whatever, good, it affects our character. It demonstrates our character. So that's Solomon's point. So from verses 14 right down to verse 23, Solomon is saying, be careful what you pursue. Be careful what you go after. Right? Be careful what is your focus in life. In other words, where you are, how do I put it? Where your perception, your perspective and your world view, put it that way, your view of life is twisted, is not according to knowledge, is not according to wisdom, which of course we know is the fear of the Lord. Solomon is saying it will result in your ruin. So be careful of what you desire. Be careful what your choices are, and be careful what you desire. Make sure that it is in line with the word of God. All right. So that's what Solomon is saying. What we desire and what we crave after, it not only will have consequences for us, but it is a demonstration of who we are in terms of our character. And if we are pursuing and going after righteousness, God's wisdom, if our lives are ordered by the fear of the Lord, it is then that our lives will become fruitful. And that's Solomon's point. All right? Okay. Now, again, Solomon is going to go to his usual ideas in verses 24 to 26. Scoffer is the name of the arrogant, haughty man who acts with arrogant pride. The desire of the sluggard kills him, for his hands refuse to labor. All day long he craves and craves, but the righteous gives back and does not hold back. Solomon is again talking about pride, still talking about laziness. All right? And the result of our laziness. Now, verses 27 to 29. The sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination. How much more then he brings it with evil intent? A false witness will perish, but the word of a man who hears will endure. A wicked man puts on a bold face, but the upright gives thought to his ways. No wisdom, no understanding, no counsel can avail against the Lord. The horse is ready for the day of battle, but the victory belongs to the Lord. All right, Solomon, here's what you're saying. There is man's wisdom can never be greater than the wisdom of God. God's yes, you can get the horse and you can say you're going out for victory, but guess what? Remember that the person who is in control is the Lord. All right. He says in the last verse, but the victory belongs to the Lord. All right. We can trust in ourselves, But you see, ultimately, what becomes of us is dependent on the will of the Lord. All right. So that's Solomon in verse 20, in chapter 21. Now here are some key themes that we see coming out in chapter 21. What would you say are some of the major points that we are getting from chapter 1, from chapter 21? There's some major themes. The first one we could say is that God is sovereign. God is sovereign. And we see that in verse 1, and we see that in verse 30. In fact, we see that in verses 30 to 31. The victory belongs to God. There's no counsel that can override God. The king's heart is in the hand of God, so God is sovereign. Those verses bring out that theme of chapter 21. Now, here's another theme that we see in the chapter. Empty religion is useless. All right? So there's a contrast between right living and right worship. Or empty worship, I should say. In other words, so in verse 3, some things are more acceptable to God than others, in verse 3. All right? Look at verse 27 of chapter 21. Is it verse 27? Yes. The sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination to God. So there is right living, righteousness as against empty, vain, useless religion. Another theme that we see coming out of the book, out of the chapter, is the importance of moral character. The importance of humility and the dangers of pride. Okay. Let me hear verse 4. Verse 4 and verse 24. Let me show you something. That moral character, humility, and the dangers of pride. Look at verse 4 and verse 24. Haughty eyes and a proud heart, the lamp of the wicked are sin. God calls pride sin. Okay, that's in verse 4. In verse 24, in verse 24, the person who scoffs is the name of the arrogant, haughty man. Okay, so Solomon continues his idea about pride and humility and what we are as a moral character. All right, now here is something else that Solomon talks about in the verse, in the chapter. The importance of our speech, the importance of truth, and the evils of deception. So our speech, the importance of truth, and evil deception. The dangers of evil deception. So we see this in verse 6 of chapter 21. We see it in verse 23, and we see it in verse 28. All right. So the idea of our speech, the importance of truth, and the dangers of deception.
How about consequences?
Say it again.
How about consequences?
Yes, and the consequences that come of lying. Yes, there is definitely a consequence. All right. Now, here's another thing that Solomon keeps talking about in this chapter. The whole idea of domestic strife. The whole idea of conflict in the home. Look at verse 9. It is better to live. It is better to live in a corner of the housetop than in a house shared with a quarrelsome wife. All right. Verse 19. It is better to desire. It is better to live in a desert land where there is no, whereas you're going to have want and whatever, than with a quarrelsome and fretful woman. He talks about as well. Yeah, I think those are the two verses. All right. And what Solomon is suggesting here is that peace, contentment in the home are priceless. You want a home that is harmonious. You want a home that is free from conflict. All right. And here's another thing that Solomon wants us to deal with as a theme in the verse. The whole idea of laziness. Don't be lazy. And we see that in verses 25 to 26. The desire of the sluggard kills him. All day long he craves and craves, but the righteous gives and does not hold back. All right. So that would be chapter 21. All right. We might not finish chapter 22. All right. If not, then we'll have to continue 22 in the next class. All right. But let's look at it, chapter 22, for a while. At least we can outline some things. All right. Now, there's something else that I want to point out, though, is that what we have here in chapter 22, I need to point this out to us, is Solomon now is going to move into chapter 22 with some sayings. All right. With some brief comments about different situations. All right. Very different situations he's going to be dealing with here. Okay, let me first of all look at this. Okay, we're going to say that it is divided into two groups. All right, or we can divide the chapter into two aspects. One, from verse 1 to 16 of 22, Solomon is going to deal with individual proverbs. Individual proverbs from verses 1 to 16. All right, he's going to deal with some, and I'm going to explain what I mean. Then, from verses 17, he is going to now move to the sayings of the wise. So he's going to be looking at some individual personal sayings, and then he's going to move to the sayings of the wise and how that is going to be reflected. All right. Now, let's look at something here. I want us, I hope we can, yeah, we can, I think we can get to it. That I want to challenge you on something. Let's look at verses 1 to 5 of chapter 22. All right. Here are some individual sayings that Solomon is making. All right. A good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, and favor is better than silver or gold. The rich and the poor meet together. The Lord is the maker of them all. The prudent sees danger and hides himself, but the simple go on and suffer for it. The reward for humility and fear of the Lord is the riches and honor of life. Thorns and snares are the ways of the crooked. Whoever guards his soul will keep far from them. All right. Now, these are now some individual proverbs that Solomon is making. Okay. Comment on any, well, what is verse 1 saying?
A good name is to be more desired than great wealth.
What's a good name?
Your reputation.
All right. I remember way back, this is almost 50 something years ago. There, when I was in primary school, there is a story I read about the Banshee Pharaoh. And the Banshee Pharaoh, she was giving gifts to people, talents to people. And she asked this man, what should I give you? Skill without success, or success without skill? Skill without success, he answered. I will never, I always remember those lines. And what the point of the story is, for you to be successful without skill is useless. But if you have the skills that are necessary for any task, you will get success. And the idea is, what do you value most? Now, when Solomon says a good reputation, your integrity, again, here is another better than proverb, where he's giving a value judgment. Solomon is saying it is better to keep your reputation intact than to chase after economic material prosperity and lose your reputation. Economic prosperity can never be as good as your good name, your integrity, your reputation. That's Solomon's point. So he's now looking at the individual. Okay, which would you prefer? For you to be respected as a person who is honest, upright, and decent, than to have $1 million or $1 billion? What is more important to you? That is Solomon's point. Here is Solomon now. It doesn't matter if you are rich, verse 2, or poor. In the eyes of God, you are all the same, because he is the maker of all. You meet together. God is not concerned about your economic status, because all of us are made in the image of God. All right? The prudent sees danger and runs. The prudent sees danger and hides himself, but the simple go on and suffer for it. Here is the point. You see, if you are wise and you are able to think ahead and discern things before they happen, you are perceptive, you will not suffer. A fool sees courage, sees danger, and runs into it thinking that he is invincible. Solomon says, if you're wise, you're going to be able to assess a situation before you run into it. Verse 4, the reward for
Brother?
humility. Yes?
Just to make a quick comment that I found interesting, the phrase "to be chosen" in verse 1. I was thinking it's something. It's not like to have a wish from a genius or something like that, where you can choose a good name or riches, but it's in the daily life. If you see that a business will make you rich, but perhaps it's something not that good or something like that, you need to make that choosing every day.
Yes, yes. You need to make that choice every day. And very good. It is so, and David and others, the idea that it is chosen means that it's something that you have thought about, contemplated, and then decide that this is what I prefer rather than this. It's like Moses. He chose to suffer with the people of God than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season. Yes, the choice suggests that it is deliberate contemplation. All right? Yeah, very good. I like that. Very good. Now, here is Solomon now. The reward for humility and fear of the Lord is riches and honor and life. Notice the honor goes back to the good name. The riches, which is more valuable than silver and gold. And then life is contrasted with the idea of suffering for something. Okay? So Solomon is saying that Humility and the fear of the Lord are to be desired over these temporary material things. The fear of the Lord is more valuable and lasting than everything else. All right? Now, here is where I want our opinions. Read verse 6. You read verse 6 and you tell me what verse 6 is saying.
Train a child in the way that he should go, and when he is old, he will not turn from it.
Okay. All right. Any comments? You want me to ask the question? Does it mean, is it saying that once you train the child right, he will never become wayward? He will always be faithful to God once you train up the child? Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it. And everybody is silent.
So,
Yes, Chip.
I think that this preaches to the rest of the stuff that we've been reading about today, which would be um, our actions, right? Our actions have consequences, and I find a lot of brothers and sisters now in these situations with children that are unfaithful, and children that have no want or desire to know God. Well, I started to ask them, well, what kind of example did you give them? You cannot have an expectation of someone when you haven't provided the thing you expect them to have.
All
So when
right.
we look,
Oh,
so when we look at
go
this
on.
situation, when we look at this situation, it's about being authentic, practicing what you preach. Action is required. I mean, with my children right now, it's an everyday learning process. But what I've started to understand is love is the key. Patience is the next key. I guess really the main key is including God in everything that you do and encouraging them to do the same. And you can't just tell them, you got to show them. And it can't just be on Sunday. It can't just be on Wednesday. It has to be every day consistently. And I believe that this verse that we're reading here is saying if we indeed tap into the knowledge and wisdom that has been shared from these proverbs and we do it, not talk about it, but we do it, then yes, I believe that this 22:6 is 100% saying that your children will not depart from it, but the burden lies on you.
All right. Okay. David.
Uh, for many years, I thought that this verse proved that if an elder had a child that goes astray, he could not be an elder. I thought that for many years when I studied this verse, and then I start hearing some other opinions about that, and how how comparable was this with God in the garden of in the beginning with Adam and Eve, and how he was the best father that anyone can think, and even though his children go astray because they had their own decisions, and then I start thinking about different, and now I found something, a word interesting at the beginning in the first line that says the way he should go. So is something, if I am not mistaken, that word is like a possibility. So he should be in that, but it's his decision at the end.
All right. Okay. Emmanuel, what do you think?
Okay. And what I know of is a duty of a parent to train their child or their children in a right way, but nothing is guaranteed. Looking at the prodigal son, I mean, he trained their children the way they should go. But when they grow up, people might depart from the truth. And looking at, we all have conscience. When they grow and they matured enough that, and they know their good and bad, after all, when they come on in their senses, they will know that, okay, after all, what I did is wrong. So let me come back to the right, or to the right path. So it is just, as David said, it's probability.
All right. Okay. I hope I'm not getting it twisted, but Josiah was a good king. I hope I'm getting it right. Josiah was a very good king. No, Hezekiah. Manasseh. Who's Manasseh's father again? Is it Josiah or Hezekiah?
Yes, Hezekiah is the father of Manasseh.
Right. Hezekiah was a good king. Good, but his son was in fact, the Bible says that there was nobody as wicked as Manasseh before him or after him. Yes, we know that Hezekiah went astray for a while, but all right. Now, here is the point. What Solomon is saying here. Okay, let's put it another way. A lot of persons have taken this text to say what it is not saying. It is true that we must train our children, and if we don't and they go astray, we are partially to be blamed. Right? That is a given. And if we lay the foundation, at least we are giving them a base on which they will build their lives. But what Solomon does not discuss in this verse is that each child has, when he grows up, has a will and a mind of his own. We as parents, and I agree with you, we as parents must make sure that we lay the foundation, not just by saying it, but by living an exemplary life before children. But that is where they should go. It doesn't necessarily mean that they will always go that way. All right? With the question with the eldership, the elder must rule his own house. And if he has ruled his house well, and his daughter or his son has their own home away from his direct control, I think we would be stretching it to say he can't be an elder after he has trained his children and they have been faithful and while under his control. Here's the point. The elder, because of the reputation and the influence that it has on the church, might choose to say, look here, for the welfare of the church, I will step down because of the way my children are behaving. But you see, if he does not, he must be able to control his own house. All right. And after, let's say an elder is 70 and he has a child that is 50, and that child has grown unfaithful. I think we would be stretching it too far to say that he should resign. It's his choice. He might decide that, look here, I'm going to, for the good of the church, to prevent, you know, the for to how do I put it now? So that it does not become a problem for the church. He may decide that, look here, I will step down. Yes.
Recently, I was teaching about that, and then a thought came to my mind. Uh, for example, if you are an elder in Warner Robins and you have a son,
Hmm.
but he assembles in other congregation. He has his own house, his own wife, children, and everything, and he goes astray. And I was thinking it will be not good for you to leave your sheeps in Warner Robins to
Hmm.
go and take care of another sheep in another congregation as
Yeah,
well.
I see your point. Hmm.
But I was thinking about that, and I know people that step down for that reason. But I was thinking if it is another congregation, must be a bad
Yeah,
decision.
yeah. Um, I don't think he once it's out of this control, under not under his authority, has his own house, his own children. I think it would be unfair to say, and I don't think it would be um in the sense of scripture to say he has to resign. But I think it should be a decision that he makes for the welfare and the benefit of the congregation. All right. But back to Proverbs. Solomon is saying that's the way the child should go. It doesn't necessarily mean that he will always go that way, because he also has a will, a free will that he can exercise. Okay. But nonetheless, you must ensure that you lay a proper foundation for the child. All right. I'm sorry we haven't got to, let me check my syllabus. Yeah, here it is. Next week, Tuesday, we are going to be looking, we will complete, we will complete chapter 22 and then go through um, chapters 23 and 24. All right. So I think that would be the um, the class next fall. Is it Monday? Monday's class. Yeah, we meet on Monday, right? Yeah, on Monday. So on Monday, we will complete chapter 22 and go straight through to chapter 24. All right. Um, Anybody has their syllabus with them can access it readily. You have your syllabus with you that you can access. Let me just encourage us to start thinking about the the sermon outlines, um, that we will need to. I don't think the sermon outline is due, because I said I'll wait until we get to week 10, where we do the end of the chapter, end of the book, because you might want to look at something in that. Okay. So just be mindful of that. And I think the
midterms will
yeah.
cover 1 through 24, right?
Yes, the midterm is after chapter 24. All right. What I'll do, I'll go through. We'll review what we have done up to 24. And as I said, the way the test is going to be, I'll give you a passage, basically. It will take home. I'll give you the passage and just ask you to comment on the passage. What is it saying? That kind of a thing. All right. But it will be things that we would have covered. And then I'll post it on the LMS. I'll tell you that's there. And then you download it, you do the responses, and then send it back to the LMS. And I'll do it from there. All right. Any questions, comments? All right. Okay. All right. Thank you for a good class. Let me, Emmanuel, you want to dismiss us?
Merciful and loving God, we thank you for giving us strength and understanding to study your word. Father, we appreciate your goodness. Still commit our tutor also unto your care. Continue to give him strength and heal him from every sickness that he's going through. Also commit the entire school teachers also unto your care, and the student as well. Father, give us understanding anytime we pick up your word. Give us illumination so that at the end, we should be bold enough to preach your word to the world, and also live in a harmonious life that will tally your word, so that the world will know that indeed these people are your children. We thank you for listening to our prayers through our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Amen.
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 Emmanuel, remind me again, what, I don't know if it's state or province, what province in Ghana are you from?
I'm in Takoradi.
You're in Takoradi?
Takoradi, yeah. Western region.
Okay. All right. All right. Yeah.
It's awesome to be in class.
Say it again.
I love being in class with all of these fellas right here. It's nice to learn together.
Same here.
Yes.
Thank you.
Same to you.
Yeah. We make a good class, I must admit.
Bye-bye.
Beautiful thing.
All right. Okay, then. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I'll enjoy the rest of your evening.
All right.
All right. Okay, then. Bye-bye.
Bye.